President Buhari reiterates federal government's resolve to guarantee security and safety of all law-abiding Nigerians.
Towards ensuring effective use of smart card readers in future elections, resident electoral commissioners maintain Abuja.
Federal government to enforce prohibition of all forms of discrimination against persons living with disability in the country.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss Nigeria's global emission reduction target.
All right, let's begin with a new statement that just emerged from scientists across more than 150 nations about climate change. Of course, that statement says that the picture is gloomy indeed. It's captioned, and I quote, "Please panic. Climate change will kill us all," unquote.
Now, that statement indicates that climate change crisis is accelerating faster than expected. In fact, climate change is now considered one of the biggest threats facing humanity. And this, of course, is evident from the unpredictable variations in weather conditions.
Indeed, and the UN Climate Change Conference, known as COP25, kicked off in Madrid, Spain, just a few days ago, and it will be on till December 13th, with urgent calls for the world to make serious progress and make decisions on the right climatic action for the world over the next 2 weeks. So, a new environment program report, which also has just been released, with the warning that unless global greenhouse gas emission fall by 7.6% each year between 2020 and 2030, the world will miss the opportunity to get on track towards the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal of the Paris Agreement.
The Paris Agreement aims to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change by keeping global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Now, the agreement also aims to strengthen the ability of countries to deal with the impact of climate change.
All right, and in order to reach these very ambitious goals, financing plan, a new technology framework, and indeed an enhanced capacity building framework is expected to be put in place, and that is to support developing and countries that are vulnerable to enable them mitigate the change in line with their own national objectives. Now, a UN annual emissions gas report shows that even if all current unconditional commitments under the Paris Agreement are implemented, temperatures are still expected to rise by 3.2 degrees Celsius, bringing even more destructive climate impacts on the world. And so it's on this very gloomy note, unfortunately, that I welcome all of you to this midweek edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And today is a serious matter that we all must take action. I am Claire Adilabu Abdulrazak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program. As usual, we shall have the complimentary segments, and these include business, newspaper review, and others. In the meantime, let's join our colleague Dennis Adeguloye, who brings us the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning, Kingsley and Claire, and good morning, Nigeria. Here is the news. President Muhammad Buhari has reiterated government's resolve to do everything within its constitutional power to guarantee the security and safety of law-abiding citizens. Speaking at this year's annual conference of the Chief of Army Staff in Kaduna, the President reassured the nation that this is a commitment that will be kept.
This government will continue to support the Army to sustain this laudable initiative, aimed at repositioning you to deal with contemporary security challenges and to achieve a modern army of the future.
And for Nigeria to sustain peace and security in the country, traditional rulers must caution their subjects to rise above primordial sentiments capable of creating distrust among the diverse ethnic groups in the country. At a security summit for members of the South Monarchs Forum, Secretary of the Government of the Federation said the federal government is taking more decisive action to eradicate all forms of insecurity.
With the remarkable achievements recorded in the areas of economy, security, and anti-corruption in the first term of His Excellency Muhammad Buhari, this second term promises to be more decisive in its efforts to eradicate all forms of insecurity challenges and social vices in our country.
Vice President Oshimbajo, while presiding over the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council's meeting, said the president is very concerned about complaints regarding the airports. This is in a renewed effort to improve the experience of travelers at the airports, especially that of Lagos and Abuja. And immediate steps to make improvements are in the offing as PEDIC, working with the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, FAN, and the Immigration Service to establish certain standards. Voices for the establishment of a commission for persons living with disabilities are getting louder, with the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development adding its voice to the cause. The ministry's proposal is coming on the day the world marks International Day for People Living with Disabilities in Abuja.
For them to know that they are not left behind, they are being carried along, they are going to be supported in whatever way they need the government's support. And they're going to have projects and programs that the government is going to execute.
Meanwhile, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, has directed ministries, departments and agencies of government to ensure full compliance with the provisions of the National Disability Act 2019, which prohibits all forms of discrimination against persons living with disabilities. Permanent Secretary, Ecological Funds Office, Habiba Lawal, stood in for the SGF at an event to celebrate officers with disabilities in the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation.
In order to obtain first-hand information on their needs and challenges with a view to finding possible solutions.
This celebration will not stop here. We will continue in our different offices and homes.
And at the National Assembly, the Senate has received a request from President Muhammadu Buhari seeking the confirmation of the appointment of 16 members of the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria. The Senate thereafter adjourned 30 minutes later after reconvening Tuesday's plenary in honor of a serving member of the House of Representatives, Jafaru Ilyasu, who died on Monday this week.
Zikrullah Kiru Olakunle Hassan, position chairman, state of origin, Osun State. The Senate may wish to note that the names of the representatives of the Jamaat al-Nasr al-Islam and Nigerian Spring Council for Islamic Affairs will be sent to the Senate subsequently.
The Independent National Electoral Commission is strengthening its processes to ensure the effective use of smart card readers and to engage the National Assembly for robust electoral reforms. Chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, stated this in a meeting with all the resident electoral commissioners in Abuja.
It is therefore important to undertake our internal appraisal of recent elections, beginning with briefings by the resident electoral commissioners responsible for states where elections were held.
And those are the news highlights for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Claire after this break. I'm Dennis at Dignity. Good morning.
Non-stop. Stop. They are germs. You will fall sick. Daughter, why don't you stop them?
Mom, stopping the kids from playing stops the learning. That's why we stop the germs.
Indeed, Safeguard fights against germs. Safeguard removes 99% of germs.
Why don't you stop them? We have to stop. Not the kids, but...
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Gogi Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnership with the largest TV network in Africa, the NDA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Lagos State Government, Kano, Delta Airlines, Royal Caribbean, Tour Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage and tourism.
You can choose to manage everything else, but not your data. Get more out of life with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# today. Data is life.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you want to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Aliko. Checking out of this country without proper planning is one thing. Unimaginable begin. I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I'm saying, without the proper footing abroad, risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
I'm Deputy Comptroller of Customs Joseph Atta, the spokesman for the joint security exercise. Over a period of time, either through indifference or deliberate non-compliance to the ECOWAS protocol on transit of goods by our neighbors, the Nigeria Customs Service have been raising this issue. MOUs were signed severally. They were broken as soon as they were signed. We've seized over 32,050 bags of rice. And that is a huge impact. And then the fact that the coming in of this foreign rice have been completely shut down. We've gone around with received testimonies of farmers who, before now, found it difficult to sell one truck on a market day. These people say it now that those who could not sell one can now sell up to 20 trucks.
Thank you for joining us here, and good morning, Nigeria, live on the network service. And time for some business news. And the federal, states, local governments share 2.273 trillion naira in third quarter of 2019. Abdul Karim Zumi will tell us all about this.
This year has seen the Federation Account Allocation Committee disburse a total of 6.115 trillion naira in the first 3 quarters. Between July and September 2019 alone, 2.273 trillion naira was shared among the 3 tiers of government, as well as other statutory recipients. According to a quarterly review of FAC, disbursement by the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the third quarter allocations witnessed an 18.75% increase when compared to second quarter 2019, as well as 17.81% increase from that of first quarter. Now let's take a look at the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to see how the market fared on Tuesday, 3rd of December 2019. With business news, Abdul Karim Zermi.
Many thanks, Abdul Karim, for the business package. Up next for us is a review of some of the papers we have today.
Bayo Ateyebe is right here with us on the studio for the newspaper review. Bayo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning. Good morning, Kingston. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, I'll take a look at the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust, below the nameplate, says we got 807 petitions over 2019 elections, and that's according to INEC. 125 MDAs violate federal government's clearance order for IT projects. Details on page 17. Sacked Oshibajo's aides not in humanitarian ministry. Details can be found on page 5. Now, lead story says with a kicker, Wadume, 4 months after, killer soldiers yet to face court-martial. You can see the illustration on the front page showing the timelines of the incident. On the 6th of August this year, 3 policemen and 2 civilians attached to the intelligence response team were killed during a confrontation with soldiers along AB Jalingo Road in Taraba State. On the 8th of August, President Muhammad Buhari ordered probe of the saga. On the 20th of August, kidnapped kingpin Misu, popularly known as Wadume, was arrested by the police. On the 8th of October, Board of Inquiry constituted to probe the matter released its report. And on the 10th of October, 3 corpses of victims released. 23rd of October, the 2 remaining corpses released. And the headline once again, 4 months after, killer soldiers yet to face court-martial. Now, right at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust, 6 girls drowned in Kebbi Kano mishap. That's page 6. House Commission gets new chairman, page 3. And NSC elections, that's Society of Engineers. Engineers decide tomorrow. That's on page 10.
All right, we also have a very bold caption on the front page of the Daily Sun. And it reads, "We've uncovered plots to destabilize Nigeria," attributed to DSS. And it comes with the rider, federal government committed to ending impunity, attributed to the Attorney General of the Federation, Malami. You can read up the details of that on page 6. Now, just the airpiece there on the other side of the Daily Sun, it reads, "FG steps up anti-insurgency war as Buhari unveils Nigerian-made," I think this should be mines-resistant ambush protection military vehicles. You can read up the details on page 6 of the Daily Sun. 2 picture stories you can find, the very pronounced one there. It's International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and that's members of the Human Development Initiatives, of course, and Action Aid during the work to commemorate 29th International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and that, of course, happened in Lagos yesterday. Trending stories at the bottom of the paper. Southeast Governors defend Air Peace Chairman, pledge to support airline to overcome U.S. issue. That details you can find on page 37. And 6 girls die in Kebbi boat mishap. You can find them on pages 4 and 5. And INEC presses for Electoral Offences Commission. Works with NATS to actualize this, as Mahmoud says, electoral impunity high and unbearable. It's on page 6. And I think that's the outlook of the front page of the Daily Sun. Bio.
Yes, in the Let's start with INEC, the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has been doing some stock taking. At a meeting with resident electoral commissioners, the chairman revealed that there were 807 post-election petitions that were filed over the 2019 elections. Out of that, 582 were dismissed, 183 were withdrawn. If you put that together, that gives us about 768, and that is about 95% of those petitions were eventually frivolous and were withdrawn. This led to only 30 that led to rerun. 12 of them were for certificates of return, and the rerun were across 12 states. In the senatorial category, 2 senatorial districts out of 109 had rerun, while 13 federal constituencies out of 360 had reruns. For the state constituencies, there were 15 out of the 991 cases. So, be that as may, you see that INEC, on comparative basis, had done reasonably well. Meanwhile, the chairman is of the strong view that if there's need to liaise with the National Assembly to stress on the smart card reader, and indeed, if there's any need for any electoral reform, the time to do it is now, not wait until when 2023 is knocking at our door, and then legislator will be stampeding into electoral amendment, which may eventually be declined as. The other noteworthy story is a critical stakeholders in the downstream of petroleum sector. They have declared a zero fuel queue operations during Christmas. Followed a meeting at the NNPC headquarters, which was held involving all the stakeholders, and they have adopted a strategy that will ensure a seamless petrol distribution across the nation. The stakeholders agreed to some measures. This include a clear timeline for loading fuel, stamping out of dispatches at depots, and also clear documentation of all tankers when they deliver fuel. They have the support of all the PPPRA, Department of Petroleum Resources, the National Association of Road Transport, as well as petroleum tankers are all involved to ensure that we have a Christmas that is fuel scarcity free. But meanwhile, President Muhammad Buhari yesterday launched Made in Nigeria Mine Resistance Ambush Protective Vehicles. They call them MRAPs. You recall during the challenge of our civil war, our Nigerians following the challenge, even particularly in the southeast, they developed the homemade bomb which was called Ogunigwe. You remember? Ogunigwe. So there are initiatives that I think can be carried out. And not only that, for the initiative of the Nigerian Army, this mine resistance will go a long way in enhancing the war. The Nigerian Air Force also, just 2 days ago at Lagos, also have an equipment that they now can use to service the C-130. Hitherto, they had to bring out the equipment, service it, fix it first before test run, and in such process would damage component. But now they have a contract that a device that they can use to test such devices. So the armed forces are actually developing indigenous initiatives by the engineering department. This one was done by the Defense Industries Corporation and in cooperation with the Army Corps of Engineers.
You know, Bayo, and that's what the 2030 development goal tries to instill, you know, in member nations, to be able to come up with, you know, domesticalizing the solutions, you know, to their issues.
To their domestic problems.
Yeah, their domestic problem challenges and all that. So this is quite, it's quite encouraging and innovative for us. I wish we can, you know, extend that, you know, to other areas. Yes, other sectors of the economy.
The other one is area of corruption. Rizkwa Mohammed, he is the son of the late General Murtala Mohammed, the head of state who was assassinated in February 1976. He said his father, 43 years ago, served Nigeria with integrity, and at the end of the when he died, he had only 7,000 naira in his account. He spoke during the unveiling of a statue in honor of his father at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, where the postgraduate hall is called Murtala Mohammed Hall. So they had this statue of late General Murtala Mohammed reviewed yesterday. Rizkwa noted that his father was fearless in fighting corruption, and he loves President Muhammadu Buhari's initiative in doing the same thing. He urged Nigerians to support the current fight against corruption. And the ICPC is following in that same light. They say that so far ICPC has recovered 9 billion from capital funds and another 25.7 billion from personal costs. The chairman of ICPC, Professor Bolaji Owasanwoye, said that aside from this 34.9 billion, there are initiatives whereby contractors are now compelled to go to the site to continue the projects for which they have been paid. He had abandoned the projects. Everybody is being held to account for their
Indeed,
actions.
and another thing I think you probably look at is the picture story, the one that has to do with the persons living with disabilities. Of course, those in Nigeria are celebrating the act, of course, which prohibits a form of discrimination for them, which is a landmark. It's a landmark achievement. But this particular work is actually advocating free, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and quality public education.
Yes, there's public education. And in fact, apart from just annual celebration, we need to emphasize that persons living with disability are part of us. And they are endowed persons who can contribute tremendously to every aspect of our life. The area that comes readily to my mind is the area in the Olympics. You remember? Paralympics. We have the highest medal won in Olympics from the disability
those living with
events.
disabilities.
And yesterday, I particularly was happy that the NTA was able to make access for persons with disability to come to the studio and contribute to that. Many public offices do not have facilities that make accommodation and accessibility for persons with disability very easy.
Indeed, well, most of the structures you find today are quite, were built far back. No, far back. So now with this act now, I know that new structures and structures that don't have, that are not,
disability
friendly will begin to adjust and, of course, make provisions for that. Kensley. Okay, let me quickly take a look at the editorials, and it's taken from Daily Asset newspaper. It's on CBN's Cassava initiative, and the high point of it, of course, the paper has brought out some gaps in the cassava value chain, precisely cassava flour. That's used for making bread, biscuits, snacks. It is put at above 500,000 tons annually, which is the demand. But at present, we're supplying below 15 tons. There's also demand for cassava starch, which is above 300,000 tons. At the moment, we're doing below 10,000 tons. I think the editorial here, the emphasis here is the latest MOU that the CBN has signed with the critical players in the value chain of cassava, and they are saying this is a welcome development. Somehow, maybe with this now, the cassava growers may be smiling to the bank, just like the rice producers.
Well, yes, the editorial is actually by Daily Asset, and it's happened on the fact that, in spite of the fact that Nigeria produces 58 million tons of cassava annually, and we are the world's largest producer of cassava, but internally, we use the cassava purely for consumption. Apple, gari, and other benefits. And the editorial is emphasizing that there are other industrial uses for which cassava could be put to, for which we are missing, particularly if we work on it and add value to it for export, and we can earn a lot of revenue. You recall there was a time there was initiative to support bread making with cassava. It was so pronounced, publicized, but eventually it faded away. And so the editorial is saying that Nigeria stand to benefit tremendously if the other industrial benefit of cassava can be indigenized, so that we can benefit from revenue, foreign exchange, from it to boost our resources.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. These perennial, if not hackneyed issues, it's not so much as to funding cassava growers. Where are the industries for the value addition? Why are those industries not being set up, and why is the commercial banking sector or the development bank not interested in funding such industries? There's the issue. Central Bank, of course, fortunately, has been too deeply involved in retail banking, and the consequences will tell in future. All right, Bayo Tebi, thanks a lot for being around. See you tomorrow.
See you later. Bye.
All right. It's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's take a short break now.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people. They traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. In the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, arise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
It is indeed befitting to honor the memory of the gallant hearts of young men who paid the supreme sacrifice to keep the country united.
President Muhammadu Buhari enjoins all ministries, parastatals, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Launch. Send your donations to these accounts. Account name, Emblem Appeal Launch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
My name's Mr. Muftau Abiodun Balogun. We started this business 4 years ago, and this is the production outlet where we do about 4,000 to 5,000 birds per day. With the closure of the border recently, we've been experiencing massive surge in demand. Our sales per day now is going to be between 15 to 20,000 birds. We needed to expand all avenues because of the multiplier effect it's creating. And the most interesting thing about this closure is that many of my farmers today are farmers we recruited recently, and they are young graduates. What the government is doing will lead us right. And I can tell you, if the government sustains this thing, sky will not even be our limit.
Meet the dreamer. Meet the stylish. Meet the bold. Meet the inquisitive. Meet the warrior. Meet the master. Meet the realist. The challenge is coming. Unity Challenge. Power, development, and peace. Coming soon.
All right, welcome back. Please panic. Climate change will kill us all. I've never in my life heard or read about a more gloomy caption, and it's quite frightening. Coming from scientists from more than 150 nations of the world, it's certainly a call to action, and a quick one at that. And that's the prompt for our conversation today on Nigeria's global emission reduction target. Let's have an insight from Kunle Adeye.
Nigeria is endowed with large deposits of natural gas and crude oil, which are expected to last for a number of decades. Consequently, a lot of activities on exploration and production will be at the peak, which will in turn result to the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Nigeria's total greenhouse gas emissions in 2014 were 492.44 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, totaling 1.01% of global greenhouse gas emissions. In Nigeria, 38.2% of greenhouse gas emission came from the land use change and forestry sector, followed by that of energy, wastes, agriculture, and the industrial process sector, which contributed 32.6% to the greenhouse gas emissions. Nigeria's greenhouse gas emissions increased by 25% from 1990 to 2014. The average annual change in total emission was 1%. In its intended nationally determined contribution, Nigeria has pledged to unconditionally reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by year 2030. It aims to achieve this by improving energy efficiency by 20%, providing renewable electricity to rural communities that are currently not connected to the electric power grid, and by ending the flaring of gas. What is the global best practices for gas flaring accounting and reporting in the Nigerian oil and gas industry? Is Nigeria on course to achieve the set targets? Are there challenges that will act as stumbling block? Who and who should be involved in the realization of this task? These and many other questions will be answered by guests on Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
Thank you very much, Kunle Adeye, for that background report. Now we have two guests with us in the studios. First, we'd like to welcome Umar Labo Gwandu, who is Special Advisor to the Minister of State Petroleum. Gwandu, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning. Also here in the studios is Stanley Ijoma, who is a climate change policy and practice expert. Stanley, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And from our Kaduna Network Center, we are being joined by Dr. Alwal Farouk Abdul Salam. He's head of the Geography Department and also in charge of the Climate Change Unit at the Center for Energy Research, Kaduna State University. Dr. Abdul Salam, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
My pleasure. Good morning, Nigeria.
Let's start from you, Dr. Anwar Farouk Abdul Salam in Kaduna. We started by reading out a recent publication by some scientists, very gloomy one. I don't know if you heard about it. Of course, it's a call to action and warning that climate change will kill everyone if we don't panic and do something. Can you situate that statement with the situation in Nigeria?
Of course, yes. I think recently there is even a change or a trend in naming the climate change to climate crisis, because truly it's climate crisis, most especially in this part of the world and most especially in Nigeria, where Nigeria has been classified as a hotspot for climate change. And why are we hotspot of climate change? Is because of the vulnerability of the population of the country. We are a huge country with a population of about 200 million, with the old statistic and the new statistic showing that over 70% of the population depend on rain-fed agriculture. We have spate of epidemic of infectious diseases almost every year in a cycle, and poverty. So these are recipes of disaster when you add up with climate change. So definitely what scientists are saying is it's a climate crisis and it's going to be deadly, because let me give you an example. A simple change in rainfall pattern this year, most especially in the northern part of Nigeria, has caused crisis. Farmers of maize complaining of losing their produce because of extended rainfall season we have. Most of the rain fell in the month of October and September, which is very, very unusual away from the. And the rising temperature is aggravating a lot of infectious diseases, namely meningitis, measles, cholera, and malaria, because these are diseases that are climate sensitive and are very happy to bloom in a warming temperature. So this, just taking these two examples alone, you will see that definitely we are in a very serious situation. This is coupled with there is little, arrangement or little plan or little adaptation measures in place to at least, solve the problem or at least lower the pain when it comes. So definitely the picture that is painting about climate change in Nigeria, and let me be very specific, especially northern Nigeria, is very dark. It's only if the relevant authorities and all, because climate change issue is everybody's business, come to do something about it. And one important thing is, go on the street of Abuja, Kaduna, or Kano, or even Lagos, these are where elite, educated people live. Ask them about climate change. I'm telling you, you'll be shocked that so many people are only hearing about climate change because of the media activities about the whole issue. But what is behind the climate change? What are we expecting? What are the effects? What do we supposed to do? Very, very few people know. So we are in a country where people are not even aware about the disaster, I mean, hanging on us. Talk less about, in planning how to deal with it. So like I said, I can confirm that we are in a very serious situation, but something can be done about it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Salam. Let's come back to our Abuja studios. Stanley Joma, against the background of what is referred to as a climate crisis, what are the policy implications for us as a country?
Yeah, it's probably an opportunity if we have to look at it holistically. It presents an opportunity for us to drive our development agenda. If we are going to truly dimension what I call the 3D extreme exposure and high vulnerability to climate change, like he tried to say, you have in the extreme north, deforestation, drought, driving displacing people who are now coming down south, as we are now seeing in the herdsmen farmers crisis. Now, Nigeria has almost 900 kilometers of coastline, and you have accelerated sea level rise. So, which is some communities are being displaced in the littoral coastal areas of Nigeria. So, and that's why you have the middle belt of Nigeria, which is another pressure point, being, a conflict zone, active conflict zone. So we really have to zoom in and properly dimension these issues and use policy to really arrest the decline. So that's why I said the opportunity is there. It's not all gloom and doom. We could, if with the right policies in place, we could leverage climate finance, for instance, to drive our other development agenda and to also build resilience of our economy and of our communities and of our citizens.
Yeah, let me just pause here. You just talked about conflict-induced climatic change. Can you speak more about that?
Yes, the manifestation, what everybody can relate, it's the herdsmen and farmers issue, but it's actually being driven by climate change. It's one of the drivers of that conflict. We all know about the Lake Chad, a massive body of water, 25,000 square kilometers of water in the Sahel. So now we have lost more than 90% of that water body, stripping about 30 million families, 30 million people in the 4 Lake Chad countries of Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger, stripping them of their livelihood. And that's also accounts for the ease with which the Boko Haram group and some other non-state actors recruit their members, because these people were farmers, they were fishermen, they depended on that body of water for their livelihood. Their grandfathers, that's what they've known. And gradually, the climate change was stripping them of that livelihood, and nobody was paying attention. And they now felt abandoned by the state, and these people came in and offered peanuts, and it became easy for them to join them. So if we had paid attention, maybe 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, like scientists have been warning in the last decades, that governments around the world should pay attention, to the climate change challenges on the economy and communities.
Kinsley, okay.
Yeah, no, I thought I had another question for him. Well, Omar Labo Gondo, from the petroleum perspective, what are the issues relevant to climate change?
Yes, oil and gas present threats and opportunities for climate change. You agree with me that the major contributor to climate issues is gas flaring, which since the signing of Paris Agreement and several policies and programs have been implemented by the government. One of them is the launching of a gas flare commercialization program that was launched in 2016, and subsequent regulation that came out of that program that was signed by Mr. President in July 2018. As it is now, the program is in place to take out all flares before the end of 2020. We have done pre-qualification of companies that are interested in taking those flares to making them economic.
What is the volume of flares that we are contributing to the ozone layer, to the atmosphere?
Recently, out of what we produce about 8.4 billion scope of gas. Out of the 11% is being flared. So out of that, but progressively from the time that regulation was passed to date, we have seen a reduction, and we hope by the time we've concluded the bid round of the flare site, we will take it to the barest minimum.
Well, I mean, you know, for gas flaring has always been a matter that was with us. At some point, the argument was that the penalty for gas flaring was so paltry, and the argument then also came that, look, in any event, gas flaring is inevitable in oil and gas sector. Well, some amount of it will have to be flared, but there also has to be infrastructure for you to utilize the gas that you don't want to flare. Where are we with regard to getting the right infrastructure, including the gas master plan, so that if the gas, the associated gas or whatever gas there is, doesn't get to be flared and it can be utilized as part of the value chain?
Yes, I think part of what government also is doing in terms of regulatory intervention was any new project that's coming must dedicate, must show the gas utilization plan before it's approved to go on. Like a GINA project that just came in, there's no flaring this on a GINA. You can only have small process of set flares. So when we go down deep, you see that before, in the next few years, we have most of the project coming to take out. And when we take out this place also, there's more small companies coming to take it. You see that the small infrastructure, a small company will come with their for example, mini LNG or LPG extraction to take out those. Then the big ones that are coming will have utilization plan in place before approval.
All right, let's again go to Kaduna. Dr. Abdul Salam, on the list of countries, with high greenhouse emission, Nigeria is ranked 6th in Africa. And we've just talked about the energy sector where, of course, gas is flared and the volume of gas that we're flaring and what is being done. Apart from gas flare, what other areas of greenhouse are we, contributing to climatic change?
Okay. Apart from gas, I think from the background of the report, he had mentioned that most of our greenhouse gas emissions comes from the energy sector, and then the land use, and again the landfill and animal production. These are the major areas where we emit more gas. But the interesting thing is Nigeria is contributing only it dangles between 0.9 to 1.1% of the total global greenhouse gas emissions. So if we are talking about carbon footprint, then we're going to say it's less, but 1% is huge to some extent. The issue is we've set out these energy emission reduction strategies, and Nigeria reported, or Nigeria submitted what they call the INDC to the COP21 in Paris on how to reduce, like in the background report where we intended to reduce unconditionally 20% of our carbon emission. But the issue, like I said, is how possible is that? Because in our major cities, including Abuja. A lot of households are using fuel wood for domestic energy source. And this is born out from the energy poverty in the country. So it's very difficult to say that we are going to reduce this carbon emission, most especially from, like I said, the land use, which covers the issue of using the fuel wood, because of the energy poverty in the country. Had it been we have enough energy from the hydro, which is a sustainable energy source, or from the gas, which is also a good one, or we tap from the solar system, which is still very, very expensive for smaller households to put infrastructure for solar energy. So completely, I can say that the low-level families depend on fuel wood and charcoal for domestic energy supply. And this will continue because the reality is that there is nothing on ground to check out the cutting down of trees for source of energy because the electricity is still not available and the gas is still not available. I always say that if the government will subsidize the issue of using the propane gas, the cooking gas in the house, then that would be, a very good start in cutting down the usage of fuel wood in our domestic houses. And like I said, every day, in fact, let me give example of Kaduna State here. We have forest reserves. About almost in every local government in the state, we have forest reserve back in the 60s. But look at it now, what is there? Some of the forest reserves are already depleted. There are no more. Some have already been, vandalized. So the issue of emission will continue, despite the fact we are only contributing 1%. And another sector is the energy sector. Just yesterday, a friend of mine is saying Kaduna was full of cars because of so many activities going on there. Why can't we have a public transport system that will reduce the usage of everybody using his own car? This is a very valid point because in all developed countries or developed cities, they have an efficient and feasible and affordable public transport system that you might want to leave your car at home. And again, we can key in even into the issue of carbon credit to encourage now in the city of Kano. Let me give an example of Kano. It's full of this tricycle with the whole Adidas or Keke Napep. We can key into the carbon credit business, provide tricycles, which I'm very sure with a very good proposal and commitment from the government we can have a proposal, we can access the $1 billion fund lying for developing country to access to develop their energy or sustainable energy sector. We can develop Keke tricycle that will use solar energy and encourage them that, okay, if you use solar energy without using, you will have a carbon credit. Carbon credit is money coming back to you. And there are a lot of countries out there and businesses and industries, multinational, that are ready to buy this carbon credit. So this will be added value, will reduce the carbon emission, and most importantly, directly pollution in the cities. And as well, these business users of Keke can earn money from this carbon credit. So I'm very sorry I painted the issue of climate crisis very dark, but with urgent intervention and commitment, I think we can key in and reduce the carbon emission and then provide some adaptive strategies, because definitely that is the main thing we should be focusing on, the issue of adaptation. The crisis is there already. The issue is how do we adapt to this crisis?
All right, Dr. Abdul Salam, I was going to stay with you, but you spent quite a while explaining this, so I will return to you subsequently. You're talking about Keke Napep riding on solar energy, and yet solar panels are very expensive. Even on the few houses where you find them, it costs quite a lot to install a solar panel on your roof. And now you're saying Keke Napep, ubiquitous as they are, should be a source of carbon credit using a solar panel. That looks a bit challenging in this environment. But regardless, we will pause you in the meantime and return to Stanley. Sometimes when we talk about Nigeria's contribution to global warming and what policy implications and therefore practice direction that we should have, very little is mentioned of power generators. Power generators. There is, I mean, whether in the cities or even in the rural areas, everywhere, I mean, so the smallest is they are better past my neighbor. Every day people are firing their generators. Of course, we're all inhaling the noxious fumes.
So yeah, we are literally incinerating ourselves out of existence because apart from the environmental issues, the first thing is addressing the climate crisis is actually a survivalist approach. So we have the soot epidemic in Port Harcourt. So that tells you we are living in an open-ended gas chamber. That's what it means. That the concentration has gone so high that it's beginning to now deposit on surfaces. You have on your car, on your body, on your, So it's really calls for drastic interventions, and we should be going beyond policy to legislation. We should be going beyond policy because this is crisis. This is an emergency.
Yeah, that people should no longer be using generators when they don't have power from the public source.
No, that's not. That's not what I'm saying. He mentioned the Green Climate Fund, where you have 100 billion facility waiting for governments to come in and assess them. Governments from developing nations. So the issue of climate finance is an opportunity because the projects that we are also going to develop, these are also developmental projects. We just need to do carbon accounting, right, and just make sure that it fits and aligns with the requirements for us to be able to assess those resources.
I'm sorry to interject here. Maybe Gwandu can also contribute to this. Look, you keep hearing all these phrases, climate accounting, carbon credit, and all of that. We say from an existential point of view, part of what we all know is that there is virtually no neighborhood where you don't have power generators. And you can see how noxious the fumes from those generators are, with health implications on us. And obviously, by the time you combine the generators in use in Abuja, they were almost equivalent to several giant industries elsewhere. What can we do on our own to say, look, we're going to cut back on the use of generators in the first instance? Those are the practical existential issues that we face. Not whether Trump is resigning out of the Paris Accord and so on. These are the practical issues we face. Our forests have been denuded. What are we doing? Local governments are sitting folding down their arms. Nobody's planting trees.
I think one of the key priority areas of our regime now is to see how we drive LPG penetration and CNG. That will take a lot of emissions from fossil fuels. If you look at the entire oil and gas industry, the emissions that are coming is majorly from the operations, but because of the product from the oil and gas, like transport sector, if you look at the emissions coming, probably is higher than what is coming from the operations of the oil and gas if you take player out. So one of the key strategy this government is adopting to have our auto industries combating to use of CNG. That would take a lot of emissions from the fossil fuels and increase penetration of LPG utilization. That will give us a carbon credit, like they're saying. Any amount of LPG we use and replace the firewood and other things, we get carbon credit as a nation, and that also helps us in driving some projects that we have. So I think there are a lot of policies we are driving, and at the end of the day,
one critical area that Dr. Abdul Salam talked about is the use of firewood.
Yes.
And I understand that about 80% of those who live in the rural areas use firewood, for their cooking, and that's the main source of energy for them.
Yes.
And we also know from statistics that the energy we require of firewood is over 50 million.
Yes, if you look at if I give you the statistics of LPG utilization, it's one area that the growth astronomical.
I will talk about LPG.
Yes.
I just want us to deal with the issue of firewood, and how much or how critical will addressing the issue of firewood, use of firewood as a source of energy, be to meeting our, internally national voluntary contributions to climate change reduction.
Yeah, it's very significant, very critical. Okay. Because if you are going to stop the use of firewood or displace use of firewood with LPG, it means that we are addressing deforestation.
Yes.
We are saving lives of women, more importantly, and we are also empowering them, because it is cheaper to use LPG than to use the fuel wood.
How realistic is that?
Now, this is, I'm actually working on a project that is trying to come up with a business model that will deliver LPG to the most difficult places in Nigeria.
The same LPG that is expensive, that those rural women cannot afford.
Yes, that's why it's a project. Now, we are looking at the business model. How do we reduce the cost? Because most of the costs come from the cylinder cost. How do you reduce the cylinder cost? How do you make it affordable for them? Can the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, come up with some subsidy? We are paying subsidy running into trillions on toxic fuel, on petroleum products. Can we transfer 10% of that to driving this LPG penetration?
We just need the administration of Goodluck Jonathan. Try to do that. What happened to it?
No, actually, that's why I said, if you see that from the last 5 years, the growth in LPG is over 700%. If you look at because now people are beginning to accept LPG as alternative to using firewood. So what the government is doing, there's a project already now to drive the penetration to rural areas. Okay, just like buying kerosene, you can take your small cylinder and go and buy 10 naira LPG or 100 naira, come back. So that availability is the key, not even the cost.
And use it where? How do you use it?
At home, like you have a stove you use in rural areas.
But isn't it the case that partly what we have seen with regard to seeking to encourage more of the population to switch over to clean cooking fuel, namely LPG, that hasn't been sufficient public enlightenment? A number of persons will tell you, even in the cities, that gas is potentially explosive, so they don't want to touch it.
I think that's the key area that government needs to do more, public awareness, because like you said, acceptability, there also is an issue there. People, this is not acceptable. But if we do more of campaign, which this program that I told you this regime is pushing, is going to take it down to the rural areas to sensitize people.
Is this a project that the federal government is driving solely, or is it because I ask this question because as we speak, a 12 kg LPG is about between 4,000 and 5,000 naira. Yes.
Yes, that's what you're saying.
So, if it is being driven by the private sector, and we know the situation, conditions, getting this product to the women who live in the rural areas, accessibility and affordability comes in. So, how do you expect a woman who uses firewood to afford the cost that the private sector man who is driving this initiative would add?
So definitely there's going to be government interventions to get down the cost. So it's like providing, like for example now, in the state, there are some state that actually doesn't even have a gas plant right now, that's a license. So if you make it available, and the price is driven by demand and supply. So if you have enough supply, that will crash down the prices.
If we tie LPG expansion, adoption, if we tie it to fighting deforestation, then it will be very easy for the government to transfer the subsidy from PMS and AGO and DK to LPG.
There's no subsidy on AGO, which is diesel.
PMS and kerosene.
Kerosene is more expensive than gas.
Yes, kerosene is more. That's what people don't really.
There's no subsidy in kerosene. On kerosene
people don't appreciate this information, and that's why the clean cook stove project you mentioned under Goodluck Jonathan, it failed because there was no knowledge management component. It was purely procurement, and we know that procurement is almost always fraught with fraud. People just upstream sign on a document, whether it gets to the people, and that's the hard work we are doing since crack then, the clean cooking code.
Hold on, since then, what has happened? You see, we keep saying that it was 5 or so years ago. What have we done to continue to expand access to LPG? We were talking about enlightenment, Gwando, a while ago, and this is part of the implication. Yes. Just a minute. Look at the rural areas. It is not sufficient to tell them about safety. You also have to find out their cooking practices. You know the kind of pots they use in the rural areas, those ones with 3 legs that look like cauldron. Are you going to put that one on the stove? The one you are saying, the ones we were using, the kind of stove we were using during NYC. I don't know what they call that one now. Sorry, you get what I'm saying? Yes. Then the kinds of food you will cook, all those ones they will be stirring like this. As you are stirring, it falls off the stove and then fire.
They do that now with LPG. They do that kind of cooking with LPG. If you go see massive,
no, those are caterers. Industrial. We are talking about those in the rural areas. As you are stirring, what is it? Is it what? Let's say what's either amala in the southwest or tuwo. You are just stirring on that this thing, and the pot is big for a family. The thing goes off like that. Yes. Everybody is hungry.
You know what the government is planning to do to take it down? We're going to have what we call macro distribution centers inside the villages, small. You can, depending on what you want to use. If you have, for example, you fry wena, they call it this thing, and you can have a small stop there sitting up on the gas stop. You can do.
They will need money to also buy new pots and so on and so forth. But just hold on a second, Stanley. Let's because these are some of the practical issues we believe ought to be considered in terms of the policy implication. There's another issue. Just hang on, Stanley. Dr. Abdul Salam, I'm sure you've been listening to the interaction amongst us here in the studios. Earlier, we're talking about, desertification in the north, coastal erosion in the south. Virtually every time these issues are discussed, it is one of lamentation. What practical measures have we seen in terms of expanding solutions to the problems? Great Green Wall, where are we on that? How many trees are local governments planting in those places where there is desertification? We're talking about rain-fed agriculture. What is happening to irrigation? These are policy and practical existential issues that we seem not to worry about, and yet we keep saying that, we should be scared about the implications of climate change.
Well, thank you for scratching that part of the discussion, and I share the same sentiment with you. The issue is, what are we doing? That's very, very important questions about, as you mentioned, the issue of irrigation, the issue of, but like I said, the bottom line, the first thing is getting to people to know about the implication of the crisis, because whatever you're going to do without them having the knowledge of what is going to happen, then it's bound to fail. That's the first point of call. Two is the necessary government agency. Whether we like it or not, this thing will go back to the government. All you mentioned is about policy and implementation, which only lies within the power of the government to do it. So the issue is sensitize the people, and as well activists should wake up and call on the government to do what is right about the entire issue of this issue of climate change. Like I said, let me give you example of the issue of generating system which you mentioned. If we are going to have, let's say, 20 hours power supply in a day, or at least even 15 hours steady power supply in a day, I'm telling you, we are going to cut down the usage of generators with 50% immediately. Because the need, like I said, there is clear energy poverty. And everybody needs energy to move from one place to another to cook his food. And if we are going to have, like I said, only 15 hours electricity in a day within 24 hours, I'm telling you, most of this problem will go. And when you come to agriculture, there are a lot of researches that has been done. Now, like I say, is how to adapt. Let me give you an example again. With the Southeastern Asia and Southwest Asia, most of the countries they are also developing countries. They are having problem with economy and development and conflicts and whatever. But it will amaze you the level of enlightenment their rural communities, their rural people have on climate change and the adaptation strategies they have already started putting in place, most especially in terms of agricultural activities. Now our farmers do not, like I said, do not even know about what is coming. Talk less about adaptation. I know there are a lot of researchers going about seed, drought-resistant seed and maize that can produce, can do in 2 months or 3 months, or whatever. But how are people aware about this issue? Again, about information, there is need of intergovernment, interministerial harmony between NIMET, NEMA, and all agencies that are related to this issue to work together to provide these solutions. In a short note, I would say it depends on the government to do all these things. Of course, the people have their own part to do, but the fuel or the government has to propel all these issues. Yeah.
Salam, you know, it was often very interesting to see all these figures and hear the figures as to what the crisis portends. I'm just asking, media issues or measures are oftentimes not part of the conversation. Do we have examples of any of the governments, federal or subnational, state and local governments, that, let's say in particular, the subnational entities, that provide us with a clear example of what we are seeing being done to mitigate climate change issues? We talk about tree planting now. People are felling trees and they're using it for as fuel. What is it that we have seen in a few of the local governments as an example of saying, look, okay, we want to have a turnaround in those practices? Oh, some local governments are now hiring youth corps members or persons who were previously unemployed to be planting trees, to be watering those trees. Are we seeing that?
Can categorically say no, we are not seeing that. That's the truth, and we can't run away from the truth. I was happy. I was discussing with the Commissioner of Environment here in Kaduna State, and he said the local governments in Kaduna hired a consultant that will arrange a private meeting at the ongoing Madrid COP25 going on to discuss about opportunities of tapping into the Green Climate Fund. I was very excited. So if we can have this kind of initiatives, and they are really, committed initiatives and going to be implemented, then we are going to say, yes, we have a hope. But the truth is there is nothing tangible going on. If that's the answer you want, a direct answer, there is none really. As far as I know, it might be going on. In all the states in Nigeria, we have to say it's only Lagos state government that is being concerned about the issue of climate change. I know they used to have a climate summit every year, discuss about the issue. And Lagos is looking at maybe the sea level rising, but the danger is more here in the north than in the Lagos, but it's only the Lagos state government that is talking about climate change. Forget about local governments. We are not even talking about them. So the issue is little is going on, or even none in some places. That's the truth. And this has to change. If not, that black painting I did will come to stay.
Let's stay with you, Dr. Abdul Salam. You just talked about two things. One, education and the need for the people to understand what we're talking about by climate change, to really see a practical demonstration of it. One, I would like for you to explain to us, there is a peg, of course, to check or, hold global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius. There are also predictions that sea level would rise within the next 8 years between 30 and over 100%. So what impact would afforestation, for instance, have on that here in Nigeria? And like I said, I'd like for you to explain to us how hot is 1.5 really?
1.5 is very hot, really. Most especially in temperate climates where they have they're experiencing warm winters and very hot summers. But that 1.5 is the average. What the figures are showing in Nigeria, I did a lot of research on that. There are some areas in West Africa, including part of Nigeria, that if we go ahead business as usual, after 2100 or 2100, the temperature in some places will rise by 4 degrees, and that is deadly. Let me give you one example. Our problem in Nigeria is even the issue of data. I was in Niamey, Niger Republic, and then one of the vice chancellors is saying that they had a blackout for 7 days, about 7 days, epileptic power supply, and people were dying. They had serious uprise, a spike in heat-related mortality in Niamey. I now dip my head. I say, okay, how many people are dying in Nigeria because of the issue of heat? And like I said, in some part of this country, by 2100, the temperature is going to be, to rise by 4 degrees. I talk about diseases, infectious and non-infectious diseases that are really, really heat-related and are going to rise in number. We are going to see this rise in number. So you talk about afforestation, how afforestation can help in this. I can say a little, because we are talking about global issue. If you look at our carbon footprint, we are saying less than maybe or 1%. But the culprits that are producing the 50 to 40%, America and China, they have the adaptive capacity. They have the adaptive capacity in terms of when sea level rise, they can evacuate their people. When there is epidemic, they have the healthcare delivery system that is working. But here in Nigeria, take a little example of extreme events we are having during the rain season, which is also climate change related. When you have a flooding in a city, where do you take the people? To primary schools. And after some few hours, you have outbreak of cholera and diarrhea because of how people are being compacted. Because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the plan, disaster risk management or disaster management plan in place to take care of these issues. And what statistic is saying, what climate models are saying, we are going to see more of these extreme events. And most especially, very, very funny rainfall. You can have a rainfall of 1 week in a day, and that is a havoc. If you have that, where are you going to take the people? We don't have the infrastructure. Though we have the policy, we have the institutions, but I think I am not the one to answer why this is not working. Today, if you have flooding, I'm telling you, they will march the people to a nearby primary school. It's okay, it's a global practice. How conducive is the primary school? Is there toilet facility? And then another disaster will key in. So there are a lot to be done. And like I said, we have to be serious about and sincere and be realistic about this issue of climate crisis. Last but 1 year, in the span of 2 hours, in the span of 24 hours, about 2,000 people died in Pakistan and India. And we have seen what happened in one of the Gulf countries. About, 3,000 people died in the span of 24 hours. In their own case, they have the data. People are dying in Nigeria. Climate-related deaths, whether infectious disease, whether direct heat-related issues, but we don't have the data. And that is why we are not even alarmed, because, of course, I'm very sorry to say, life is not too much valued in our country. People are dying every day, and it seems nobody cares. So we have I agree with we. We have to be very, very serious about this issue. If not, then we are in for it. We have the issue of insecurity, a lot of issues. Then on top of it, climate change. That will be very bad for the country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdulsalam. Stanley, you've been itching to say something.
Yes, I think the missing piece of the puzzle in terms of why we have inaction here is actually the ignorance of the political and approving authorities. Now, if you go beyond the federal and step down to the subnational governments, you see these environmental issues, climate change issues, they still see it as marginal, abstract issues. And they tell you, oh, we are interested, our concern is how to poverty eradication,
infrastructure.
Yes, how to. I said, climate change is a threat multiplier. Whatever problem you have, it multiplies it by a million times.
It covers about 3 goals.
Every sector is either being impacted by climate change or it's contributing to climate change. Every sector of the economy. So how many states have advisors dedicated to advising the governors on climate change issues? You don't have that. I'm happy he mentioned Kaduna State. In 2016, we wanted to use Kaduna State as a model. Somehow, somebody woke up one day and had some, monies about climate finance and all that, and thought, it was just something you go, wake up and go and pluck. That was it.
For you to have solution to any problem, you need to have a credible data. And that's missing in all aspects of our society.
You can't have data if you do not prioritize a problem.
If you don't focus
Your
on
first thing is for you to understand that this is an existential threat. If you understand it, then you are really going to devote resources to build some kind of framework at the subnational level, which was exactly what we wanted to do in Kaduna State.
And state governments have planning commissions that could help in gathering those data. You don't have to wait for the National Bureau of Statistics.
Yes, but you have to. You really have to identify that as a problem.
As a challenge.
As a challenge. That this is a crisis affecting your state.
But I'm just wondering, gentlemen, and that also includes Abdulsalam in our Kaduna Network Center. We've been talking about the knowledge gap, say in the rural areas or in other communities where the use of clean fuel for cooking isn't quite popular. We're still talking about the subnational entities. One must wonder, it's not every time that you say, okay, the National Orientation Agency has offices in 774 local government areas. There is no rule, there is no law that forbids local governments on their own from also engaging in public enlightenment. And then there is no state in Nigeria where the state government doesn't own at least one radio station or one television station. In other words, throughout the federation, you have public broadcasters. Why, therefore, are we still complaining about the fact that we are unable, to reach our populations with the requisite information to help change their habits with regard to the consumption of fossil fuel?
The problem, like I said, the gap is the decision makers not knowing about the magnitude of the problem. That's where the gap is. Because you can't do that if you don't have resources dedicated for that. So how are you going to do that? If somebody has not said, okay, this is an issue, let us enlighten our people, let us do some kind of massive climate change knowledge management, and let our people, from the project we are doing, once you give people the information and for them to know that this is the risk they face, you'll be shocked. The project is oversubscribed. It's a small grant for a research project for the displacement of firewood cooking with LPG, oversubscribed in the far-flung villages.
Stanley, you talk about, because each time you talk about displacing firewood with LPG, I know that in other countries, they've moved on. They moved on from the physical cylinder where you could toward smart cities. Are we looking at that? I mean, the use of cylinders.
Which smart cities?
Yes, smart city.
Do we have the discipline in the first instance? Yes. When you say, because that will require you constructing gas pipelines. Where people are digging and excavating. You saw the fire incident at Ijegun some years ago. Yes. There was an earth-moving operator, what we call Caterpillar. They warned him that this is a pipeline. It went on, and then of course, unfortunately, it consumed him.
What he's doing. That's just it. You see, the problem is, like she said, we have to actually move with the global trend. What do you do? No matter, like in Abuja, if you said in the villages that you don't have people doesn't understand the implication. What about cities like Abuja? Yeah. So that's where we should be going. Like smart cities, they say yes. We're actually looking at how do we deploy this gas pipeline along the cities and corridors.
As you are doing that, you are also talking about your fire service. In the whole of Niger State, they have only 14 fire stations.
That's actually culture. I mean, it's, because Nigeria in particular, we don't have that safety culture. Even in your own house, when you put on the gas valve, if probably something happens, you can leave it on and go. So that consciousness, I think that's where we need to do more, enlighten people.
Is this part of the component of the gas commercialization plan?
No, part of LPG penetration program. We have three. We have what we call acceptability. That's we do the campaign to sensitize people. The affordability, to crash down the price, then availability, to get the infrastructure everywhere. So that's what the program is trying to do, to drive down.
We have a commitment to reduce emission by 20% by 2020.
Yes. But part of that commitment, what this regime also is doing is trying to see how we combat most of our cars like taxis to start using CNG. If you take out that...
You use CNG. Well, let's our viewers know what is CNG.
Okay, compressed natural gas. It's alternative, cheaper, it's more environmentally friendly. Yeah. So
when Desiane was Minister of Petroleum Resources, that project was started, and I think they were using some commercial vehicles in Edo State, in Benin City in particular.
Yes.
What has happened since then?
Actually, if you look at the Dangote fleet, it's all on CNG now. One is cheaper. It's also tempered proof.
Some of these things are elitist. People don't even
that's right. Like you said, like NIPCO and NMPC had that partnership, but it didn't go down because there was no much push. But now we are ready to get other private investors to also key into that program.
Okay, well, Gwandru, thanks. Let's return to Abdul Salam. Abdul Salam, you know, you also spoke about it, and we keep hearing this to say our farming practices also contribute, you know, to climate change issues or climate change crisis, bush burning, of course, the reliance on rain-fed agriculture. Again, I know that you're not in the agricultural sector, but in terms of advocacy, in terms of push to ensure that the policy makers and implementers really focus on the right thing, we have to ask ourselves, where are the agri-extension services workers? Where are they? I mean, each time we mouth all of these challenges, and in the meantime, you go to the states, you go to the local governments, where are the agri-extension service workers?
Thank you for another opportunity. I like, before I share the same issue with, I think this is a job of the civil-based organization and NGOs to put pressure on government, and most especially our legislative to ask them questions. We need to be asking questions. We need to speak out. Without doing that, these people, like my colleague in the studio said, that some of these issues are marginal to them. They are not that important. So that's the only thing that remains to us, and I hope, I mean, the government will not see this as a threat, but definitely the civil-based organization and the NGOs and the hope, like I always say to my people, that the hope of Nigeria, 50% of the hope of Nigeria lies with the media practitioners, because they have the powerful tool in their hand to twist the hand of government and even reorient people to do what is to be done. So questions need to be asked like you asked, and the pressure, we have to keep on the pressure, but from all angles, for the people in charge to do what they're supposed to do. If not, like I said, sincerely speaking, we are in a very, very serious trouble.
All right, Dr. Abdulsalam, thank you. And we have contributions, of course, from the our viewers there. We have 2 sets of tweets and quite a number of them. Kingsley.
Anoro Chukwuma tweets, at this time it's not really possible mitigating carbon, but we can cut down on the issues. Now, the use of solar power might not be a desirable solution, but the use of greening will certainly assist. This is greening is referring to tree planting.
All right, and Akeju Olagboju tweets, it's greenhouse gas of which CO2, carbon dioxide, is dominant. We do not have emission reduction policy, but we only pursue the strategy as deemed fit. Our contribution to global emission is about 1%, but the effect on us could be as high as 4% of negative shares value due to climate change.
Now, Amogbala Humbabs tweets, the issue of carbon emissions must be taken very seriously. Now, we seem to continuously underestimate its potential dangers for the environment. All relevant agencies, both at the federal and state levels, must wake up to the dangers of emissions to the ecosystem.
And Francis Obi, the country started by saying that all companies should stop gas flaring. Well, the enforcement, of course, has been our biggest problem. I think government should take the issue of monitoring of all the agencies' ministries very seriously.
Dele Jack Solomon. Now, the issue plaguing environmental accounting disclosures in Nigeria relates to a lack of standardized requirement for disclosure, political will for legislation, enforcement, and the allocation of environmental costs. Therefore, there is a need for the development of an integrated corporate environmental policy with legal backing that will streamline. What does this mean? I mean, it's a bit complicated here.
All right, Pen Praise, Nigeria cannot talk about reduction in emission without first repositioning the power sector. Let us start by doing first things first.
Okay, now, Dele Jack Solomon is one of our regulars. Dele Jack Solomon, if you're watching and listening to us, could you rephrase what you wrote in a few lines and then communicate what you intend to say? DW Nigeria Limited. Nigeria has never been serious with carbon emission reduction and management. We rely heavily on fossil fuels for our national development. The North has tremendous solar opportunities in which government can have energy to feed the grid with.
And Chris Simeon, it's impossible for Nigeria to meet our global emission reduction target. Up till now, our petrochemical industries or companies are still flaring gas, burning of fossil fuel and carbon emission. There is no political will to put an end to it.
Amechi Uche. Now, climate change is real. The Great Amazon that produces the world's 80% energy is going down. It's going down. It says the Great Amazon produces the world's 80% energy. I don't know. It said energy, and that's not correct. That's
the Amazon forest.
Yeah, that's
produces 20% of the world's oxygen.
Oxygen, yeah, not 80% of the global energy. Yes. Energy have diverse sources. 20%. Yes, but our government seems not to be getting the picture. Our response is slow towards this change.
Okay, and Omogbola, again, this is a second tweet from you, I think. Government needs to do more on the environment. We've said that. The economy is good as the environment it thrives on. If the economy is good or rather promising, the environment must equally be safe for such economy to thrive. Otherwise, such economy is on a pathway to nowhere.
Now, this is coming from a Twitter handle, Black Coffee. At what point are we going to talk about the massive deforestation in Nigeria? Millions of trees being burnt every day around Nigeria for charcoal use and exportation. That's precisely part of what we've been talking about. We have our guests here who will be talking about this. Next one.
Yes, Issa Shehu Oladimeji. Attendant effect of global warming is the extreme daily temperature and related diseases that government have to contend with through finances, aggravated by combustive appliances which must be reduced. And of course, he went on to say that attendant daily extreme temperature is also an evidence of global warming. All urban combustive appliances must be reduced.
All right, those are the tweets that we can take in the meantime. We're going to go on a short break now. When we return, we get back to our guests and get their closing thoughts on this issue.
they disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say, I no go dey do am again, because change begins with me.
I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be one carry me pass where they go.
Make I dey stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You should hear the conversation here in the studio. Actually, nobody wants to die. So this statement is really a call to action, and our guests here are trying to, tell us what must be done. We have more tweets now, Kingsley.
That's right. Forahami Idris, Nigeria should genuinely adopt renewable energy initiative. I have a solar-powered stove that uses biomass, cow dung and corn cobs or twigs, and provide light to the owner. It's clean and healthy. You have a solar power stove that uses biomass. Solar power and biomass, these are two different sources. So you can't use solar power stove and then still have biomass. I don't know. Maybe you need to clarify what you wanted to say, Idris. Okay. All right, but the point is that I say, look, you can use solar power, you can also use biomass. Biomass normally used for cooking. Yes.
House gas is from biomass.
Yes. There are green house gases.
Green house gases, yes.
Methane that's coming from biomass.
Yes,
it's even a big
yeah, exactly. I was going to say.
Ozone layer depletion.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. All right. We have Titus one day knock tweet. We've never been serious about going green in this country. All our energy profile projections revolve around non-renewable energy resources, while other countries are using their non-renewables to plan for their depletable energy resources. We should get our acts right. Go green.
Corey Mustafa, good morning. Today's topic is very important, but what is the degree of fire outbreak for getting this for the villages? Please invite a fireman to your group to discuss. Again, we have to ask the question. Yeah, we know that it's an interesting topic, but let your thoughts be clear. What is the degree of fire outbreak? We've discussed fire outbreaks in Nigeria. We had that on Good Morning Nigeria a few weeks ago. That's where it also emerged that a state like Niger, which is one of the largest in terms of land mass, has only 14 fire stations.
When we talk of fire, Kingsley, it reminds me of what is going on now in California. They've been trying for how many months now to put up wildfire. That is also a cause of climate change, isn't it?
Australia had its own share.
Yeah,
Portugal, everywhere had their own shares. But I mean, sometimes these are accidental or deliberate, incineration of fire.
Yeah, but the frequency of those fire incidents in temperate climate tells you that global warming is already
it could be sparks, but there are also of arsonists. There are reports of arsonists.
Yeah, but it would be easier to control.
Yeah, but
Stanley. So you see, the leaves are drier than normal.
I agree with you, Stanley. But also note this: it is in where you have forests that trees will burn. So
yes,
where you have forest, where you don't have forest, where will the trees burn? It is the storms that
it destroys. Yes, it hits the ground, and then
you see the heat wave we're talking about.
Yes,
you have like in the urban areas, urban heat islands. It's because of the absence of parks and gardens and trees. So the radiation from the sun hits the quota or the roof, goes back right into the atmosphere.
And then when you go to even rural areas, they don't even plant trees.
Have you noticed that in Abuja here, even right here in the city, in the daytime, I mean noon, it's very hot.
It's the urban heat island, and
it's very hot.
Getting urban heat maps. If you have approached the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Health about urban heat maps, and
let's quickly finish this, Kingsley.
Yes.
Abdul Rahman Nababagoni, it's impossible for Nigeria to reduce emission without addressing the issue of power supply. We've said it before, but he's saying that at least raising awareness about carbon emission is an important step in addressing the issue, which is what Dr. Abdul Salam has been harping on.
All right, Akintoye Ayodimeji, thanks a lot. Says, good morning, NTA. I wish to salute you for the contemporary happenings you are bringing to the fore for the consciousness of Nigerians. Thank you very much, Akintoye. Well, at the end of the day, President Muhammadu Buhari has been a champion of adequate response to the climate crisis. No doubt about that. But what then do we need to do to cascade the president's enthusiasm to the subnational levels and also get critical stakeholders, such as the CSOs about whom Abu Salam has spoken about? That's why my question is going to him. Dr. Abu Salam, what do we need to do? I mean, President Buhari has attended a number of these COP meetings, and we've seen also what he has tried to do in terms of selling the idea of recharging Lake Chad. But after the president speaks, actually, there are no echo chambers at the subnational levels and not also from the CSOs. What then can we do to energize those other sectors and make them true champions as well?
That's a very good one. I think, yes, I agree. The president has, in one of his speeches, he talked about climate change. But we need to see things in action, not only in speeches. But it's been good to start with speeches. Maybe that will instigate actions. People need to know, or like you say, all the sectors, the stakeholders, and most importantly, the state governments and local government. They should get to know that there are a lot of opportunities lying down to access, to tap. And I made mention of Green Climate Fund, which is a $100 billion fund provided by the so-called culprits of climate to developing nations. And this money is not coming to the country, or we are not going to access the money directly. There are a lot of protocols. It's either through technology transfer, which we definitely need it, and that technology transfer can solve the issue of the Kekena paper I made mention. There are a lot of countries, and Green Climate Fund can fund the issue of the KKNFM. The second one is the issue of capacity building. There is money for that. And then again, apart from the government, we need to encourage the academia for research. Like I said, we don't even have data. I am telling you, all our data are based on estimate. Nobody can tell you close to maybe 90% accuracy how much energy we are burning because of the porosity of our border. And we don't even know how much foil wood we are putting down because we don't have the data. But there is this opportunity. We can access this fund. It's meant for developing nations, most especially a country of 200 million. We are too important, and Nigeria in the West African region. So we can access this money and use it. And again, we need to remind the government, the people, that we made promise to the international community. Three major highlights of our INDCs is we are going to move from using single car to public transportation. We are going to cut our gas flaring. We are going to increase the energy efficiency. We even mentioned in INDC that we are going to produce 13 gigawatt of energy to connect rural communities that were not connected with it. We need to be reminding the government at all levels, like you say, both the national and subnational government, that this is the promise we need to international community, and we have only 10 years to achieve this. And this is very important for the image of the country, and forget about the image, that's so diplomatic, about even our own personal health and being in the country.
Dr. Abdul Salam, thank you. And of course, I would like to really appreciate your contribution this morning. Dr. Anwar Farouk Abdul Salam, thank you very much. But Stanley, like he mentioned, our INDs include energy, power, transport, and I don't know, about 7 of them. Five of them. Yeah. Okay. Now, with regards to power, we're talking about solar, and solar is quite expensive. So how can we cascade the awareness of, the impact of global warming, climate change, down to the rural level so that they also begin to take action on their own?
Yeah, it's one for us to target the political authorities, those who make decisions, and give them this information and make them have this knowledge that in their hands they have the pen to, arrest through just a stroke of pen to arrest this slide into this climate catastrophe.
You know my question. How can the rural people individually, we've talked about the responsibilities of the government at all levels. How can people like you, me, individually, what should we do? What must we do?
What we do is just to keep talking about it. For instance, Good Morning Nigeria show, you raised the issue today, and if all the radio stations are also doing that, you can also commit to bringing us here every week to talk about these issues in the next 12 months. So if we do it in the next 12 months, talking about climate change here every week, then you see that the knowledge level would have also increased.
We have other national and international issues we also focus on.
Yeah,
we can't bring you on Good Morning Nigeria. NTA has multiple platforms for these issues.
Yeah, okay. NTA as a media organization can also make some commitment in terms of the airtime they give to climate change issues, right? So radio stations, because you are asking for what people can do, what we can do outside of the government. What we can do outside, we can do little outside of the government, right? Because it's actually the government. If we have 774 local government areas, and you can imagine if we have a high level of knowledge about these issues in the domiciled in those 774 local governments, you've bring about millions of people.
Stanley, there's this ritual they call tree planting campaign. When you look around, I'm sure, we all have trees in our homes. Those who don't have the culture or the habit of planting trees, you learn to do that. When you sit out under your trees, you find the level of comfort that you get.
Yes.
Sometimes it's better for you to be outdoors than for you to be indoors with all the cement walls that we have. But why is it that whenever we have this ritual of tree planting campaigns, it starts where they are sending out the papers, and it ends on that very day. They will plant one miserable tree. Nobody will come. No. They plant that tree. Thereafter, 1 week, go there. The nursery is already withering.
Now, that's what we're saying. We need a new approach. Who is what we call monitoring, reporting, and verification? So, the cameras are there, they plant trees. What happened? After the cameras.
And there are desk officers in those ministries or agencies where those trees were facilitated.
What we are doing is to challenge the government and say, we can actually plant 1 million trees in your state.
Yes.
With proof.
Exactly. Okay.
With proof. We monitor it, you can see.
Your last comment about this going forward.
Yes, like for the oil and gas industry, we have I see to actually to satisfy the commitments of government, we need to do more in terms of implementing those policies we say we are going to do, which we believe if the enforcements are there, we'll get to that level. Like gas flaring, we were determined that by the end of 2020, we'll get to that. If you look at the industry itself, you look at the economics, like for example, if you want to shut down a facility because it's flaring, you also look at the government need money to finance the budget. So we balance the two. But when we get to that level now, I think the decisive action should be taken.
We talked about flaring. We didn't even talk about the spills.
Exactly.
That cause a lot of havoc.
There are a lot of things like spills, produced water discharge. There are a lot of policies in place now to deter companies from doing that, which instead of penalties, more like incentives. If you want to discharge produced water in zero discharge, you are going to pay certain amount of money.
All right. Well, I think it's all right that we have raised all of these issues and this concern and what needs to be done. Stanley, is still itching. Very quickly.
Just quickly. Just imagine what would happen in Nigeria in terms of moving from policy to practice if every minister has an advisor on climate change? Every governor has an advisor on climate change.
Every minister,
yes,
an advisor. No,
yes.
that would be excessive.
No, it's not, because all the ministries are impacted by climate change. All the ministries.
Who's going to pay those advisors?
No, we are talking about practice.
Recurrent expenditure.
It has to come.
Okay, all right.
It has to come from policy to practice.
Stanley. No, just before we leave, you know, all of this appears salutary in a sense now, even though we are still working on those issues. If Nigeria had not been deindustrialized, following the structural adjustment program and years on, our condition might have been much worse, because factories will be booming and working, and then they will be having their own missions.
Yes.
Now, as we are seeking to industrialize, that makes it even more imperative to pursue this green alternative that you need to have in the rural areas, clean fuels, and then planting trees and so on and so forth.
Indeed, all right. Let me quickly appreciate all our guests, starting, of course, with the representative of the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Umar Labbo Gwando, who is, of course, a special advisor on regulation. Thank you very much for finding time to join us. Stanley Ijoma is a climate change policy and practice expert, and is also an advocate of a clean cooking.
Yeah, clean
energy.
cook stoves. Yeah,
clean cook stove. All right, thank you very much, Stanley Ijoma. Earlier on, we appreciated Dr. Anwar Farouk Abdusalam in Kaduna. Dr. Abdusalam, many thanks to you for joining us on the program today. Watching Good Morning Nigeria, let's take a quick look at the sporting world.